Chapter 1161, everyone is in position just like we saw in chapter 1096, so what happens from here on out is anybody's guess. But before getting to the God Valley incident, let's for a second revisit the egghead incident, because episode 1144 of the anime, you would think that after getting so much goodness, this quality of animation so often that we might get desensitized to it, the feeling would wear off, but it just isn't, and it's never going to. Think about all the cliches like, oh, I've never seen anything like it, or my mouth was wide open because I couldn't believe what I was seeing, or I had a smile on my face throughout the entire episode. All of these things apply here. The Elder's arrival, the scale of it metaphorically and physically was amazing. Zoro vs Lucci is up there with episode 1062 in my opinion, and Dory and Brogy at the end. As the #1 fan of those two, I was so happy. There was even an additional scene of them bodying Saturn and Warcurie. I say this whenever they appear anyway. If you've been paying attention, you know these two have always been this strong, and what happened with Mr. 3 doesn't mean anything. But back to this chapter, imagine when this stuff gets animated. In about a year and a half's time, we thought the egghead incident was crazy. This God Valley incident is basically saying we haven't seen anything yet. There is a color spread and cover story page this week. The spread is of the Straw Hats playing with a claw machine, the machine which encourages underage gambling, because I and pretty much half the world's population wasted all of our money on this as a kid, because that claw is 99% of the time not strong enough to pick up the toys in the machine, although my attempt to win ratio on them is actually quite good. But this is one of my favorite color pages in a while. There's so much going on, so many different characters as plushies, Luffy holding everyone he cares about, so many of them that he's dropping them with a kid Momo in his pocket, which is nice because that's how Luffy will always see Momo, as his little brother. It's the same with Nami holding the people she cares for, Brook as the claw is great, Chopper stuck in the machine because he is a plushie in himself, Jinbei is sleeping amongst the giant plushies, but the thing with that is the same way Chopper is like a plushie, Jinbei is like a giant plush, a giant cuddly toy himself. And the cover story shows Yamato alongside Kinemon, who set her on the pilgrimage to begin with, and Super Shogun Momonosuke praying at his father's shrine, which also contains some paper lanterns of the heroes they lost along the way. So the pilgrimage was completed a while ago when the sword was delivered to Enma's shrine in Hakumai, but as for Yamato's own self-challenged journey, which was to tour Wano just as Oden did, which itself was also an excuse to stay behind and protect the country without hurting Momo's pride, that tour can be marked as complete officially, I think, with this visit to Oden's shrine in the flower capital. So once again, I'll say, Blackbeard, if you could come and spoil the party, take Pluton to end the cover story, I would very much appreciate it. The chapter opens with the island being turned upside down. We see the big three of this incident, Roger after Shaki, Garp after Roger, and Rox seemingly running on his own, thinking about his family, his son and his wife or partner, whose name is revealed to be Ellis or Eris. So we have Davy D. xebec and Marshall D. Ellis, unless Marshall is another fake name the same way Rox was. So now that we have her name and face, it does look like she is going to play the biggest role of any mother in the story potentially. I think she will survive, and her relationship with Teach is going to be the crux of his backstory. I also appreciate the fact that after we saw the Rocks pirates arrive, xebec surrounded by all of his major crew members, the next time we see him is with none of them. I don't think he cares a single bit about what any of his other crew members are doing, whether it's those big names or the fodder. As long as he gets not even himself, just Ellis and Teach to safety, that will be enough for him. And we see Dragon, he can't stay sneaking around forever, there's just too much going on, too much chaos. It was virtually impossible for him to be able to go under the radar for the entire incident. He was bound to run into somebody, and run into somebody he does. It's the giant holy knight lady who shoots him with a laser beam, causing him to drop the kids. Her name is Mafi of the Satchel family, so she isn't Killingham's relative, but that's another one of the 20 family names revealed. But even so, it still needs addressing, I think, with their sharp teeth, whether or not Killingham and also this lady here are fishmen, because fishmen as members of the Holy Knights above and judging the celestial dragons, that would be something something. Anyway, she shoots the beam from her mouth like a pacifista, but this is before Vegapunk came into the picture obviously, so it could be a devil fruit or she could just do that. Another special tribe of people who could shoot lasers from their mouths. That might really be the case because I think we have already met a member of the Satchel family and his name is Howling Gab, one of the red-haired pirates who has sharp teeth, shoots beams from his mouth. So if this is the case, then that would make him a celestial dragon, so then it would have to be asked how he ended up on Shanks' ship. But we do know Shanks visited Marijois 14 years ago or over 14 years ago, so maybe it was then, which would mean Shanks isn't the only celestial dragon on his ship. And still, even at this point, injured, beaten, he's still pushing to fulfill his promise to the boy's mother to atone for his role in this hunting competition. At this point, I don't know how anyone could still hate Dragon. He has no power yet, his name commands no respect, he was shot through with a laser surrounded by corpses and monsters. However, that one promise means more, and in all truth, realistically, Garp's one of my favorite characters, but there's far more reason to hate him than Dragon, and this incident is one of those reasons. But in exactly the same way that it was the chaos of everything going on which forced him into this situation where he was an inch away from death, that very same chaos, the winds of chaos, blew a great big Edward Newgate into the mix, who unintentionally saves him, along with Kaido, Big Mom and Shiki, and takes the Holy Knight out, cuts her clean in half, but she isn't dead, so we at least know she has the regenerative abilities already, which is another thing. Like Gabon said, this isn't immortality like the elders who don't seem to age. We know Summers and Garling, for example, get older, so this is just an insane regenerative ability, not immortality like the elders. Although Garling may have become immortal following his promotion, he's now directly tethered to Emu after Saturn had his immortality, his life force, his soul ripped away from him. But the thought has never crossed my mind once regarding an interaction between Whitebeard and Dragon, because I don't think there ever was one, this occasion not counting of course. But you know that if they ever did meet, the conversation between them would be so interesting. About family, about the state of the world, that is one podcast I would be bothered to watch. And while making their way, these four run into some other pirates who left Hachinosu with the goal of saving Shaki, but it seems they had another goal in mind, which is making a name for themselves by taking out members of the Rocks pirates. Idiots, absolute idiots, that's all they are. But I am thankful to them for one thing, which is that their stupidity gave us this incredible spread of the big four of the Rocks pirates, which is what I'm gonna call them for the time being. You know, the four most established members of the crew in the story, fighting their way out, although it's not really much of a fight. While Dragon, who thought the kids were taken, sees Shanks unconscious on the floor and is able to pick him up and run away. But as for Shanks and him landing on his head, this is very reminiscent of what happened with Goku, who was a very aggressive child before he landed on his head and he became a more kind boy. If we apply that to Shanks, there's of course the nature versus nurture thing here, with Shamrock being raised in Marijois and Shanks being raised on the Roger Pirates, where they each would have had different principles instilled in them. But let's say, what if Shanks wasn't dropped on his head? Just as Goku was very ill-tempered as a Saiyan, would Shanks have grown up to be a piece of crap like every other celestial dragon, even if he was raised on the Roger Pirate ship? In which case, it's not a nature versus nurture thing, it's just straight nature. Every celestial dragon is born with hatred in their heart. They are born evil, and it's only thanks to the fact Dragon dropped him on his head that he was able to become a normal, kind person. So that's how the twins are separated. And the last time they would see each other for over 2 decades before meeting again at the Reverie, the very same Reverie where he met Harald back when he still had his left arm and that supposed abyss mark. I think that's what Roger told him when they returned from Laugh Tale, the truth of Shanks' lineage, and Shanks would have wanted to confirm that himself, get some closure for himself. And since Shanks was talking about this to Gabon 14 years ago and the Reverie is every 4 years, this Reverie where he met Harald and reunited with his brother would be 16 years ago. And next, in terms of One Piece, it's a good week to be me, because after the Dorian Broggy gas in a 10 out of 10 episode, now comes Garp, who after making his presence known last chapter makes his presence felt in this one because he shows up and attacks the big four of the Rocks pirates, as I'm gonna call them for the time being. He punches the ground. He does not need any quake fruit powers to sink this island. I am joking, but in all seriousness, if he really wanted to, I think he could, especially after that galaxy impact on Hachinosu when he said he was off his game, losing his touch. But also, what if the island disappeared not because it became an ancient weapon or an ancient weapon was used to sink it? What if it just disappeared because of all of the massive attacks being thrown around at will? And this forces a strategic retreat. I will emphasize strategic, because they don't have the time to get caught up in a fight with him and they need to push ahead, and I'm not an agenda reader, so I'm not going to ignore these kinds of details. But at the same time, it's a 3-on-1. Yes, none of them are in their prime at their peaks, but two of them, Big Mom and Newgate, are certainly getting there, and the same could be said about Garp as well. This isn't his absolute strongest. So the fact that they thought it was necessary to go around him rather than through him, even though they probably could have, shows just what Garp on his own was capable of, and I can't wait to see him, Roger and Rocks go at it, because that is going to be majestic. And Dragon notices his father. What's going through his mind at this point? He's not going to assume the worst because it's his dad. He's probably hoping Garp had no idea about this as well, but I also think when he does find out, if he finds out that Garp knew about this, that's going to be a huge factor in his decision of leaving the Navy. Big Mom throws an attack back at him with Prometheus and Zeus, but it has no effect. The fist faces the fire and comes out unscathed. That was a combo attack as well, like in Wano, so it's not like this was some random shot she tried while running. This was a full-on attack which Garp took like it was nothing. But also, Kaido really wanted to fight. This kid, after Rocks hit him down, he wanted to fight. He came to God Valley wanting to fight Roger. Here, he wants to fight Garp. He was born for this life. But let's say Kaido did end up fighting Garp, then you know his top 5 would have ended up becoming a top 6 because Garp would have 100% had a place in that list. Plus, remember we saw Newgate in his prime as Whitebeard choose not to engage in combat with a Navy ship back in Oden's backstory, even though his victory was pretty much guaranteed because it's of no benefit for him to fight. So yes, this is some great stuff for Garp, but I also don't think it damages the others' reputations too much either. And again, I appreciate these small snippets of Kuma and Ivankov running around the island, seeing how these huge clashes helped them escape. Back to Dragon and Mafi, she still has a hold of Shamrock. She was sent to bring the babies back before Garling found out they were missing and killing them for losing his kids, so maybe she isn't alive today because she is only going to be able to return with one of those 2 kids, and I don't think Garling will be too happy about that. But from the way she's talking, it doesn't seem she's aware that there are 2 babies, twins, that she needed to rescue, which is why she thought her mission was complete with only Shamrock in her hands. So if Garling does kill her for only bringing back one of the 2 kids, she has this other celestial dragon who she's talking to on the phone to blame for not giving her the full details, because I assume this other celestial dragon was in charge of keeping an eye on them while Garling took part in the tournament. So the Roger pirates and the remaining Rocks are slowly coming together in the center of the town. We see the rest of the Rocks crew making their way to Shaki as well, but we do know none of them are the ones who end up saving her, meaning they fail the objective they went there for. So after that, what do? Rocks has gone off on his own mission that they don't know about, so they might not have betrayed their captain, but since he's not around and they no longer have a goal on the island, could this be the beginning of the Rocks pirates implosion? But also, Captain John has a metal arm which looks a lot like Kid's, so this could be the same fruit. But I've also seen images floating around that the real life pirate William Kidd's father was someone called Captain John Kidd, so that's another thing to keep an eye out for. Amidst the mayhem, Shaki has been able to resist the Marines dragging her away, but that only takes her so far, because while someone like Dragon, a nobody, found himself in danger and survived by sheer dumb luck or unluck, Shaki was meant to be the top prize of the tournament, so even after that went down, downhill, it makes sense that they would want to deal with her, I'll say, themselves. And I'm using that phrasing because Summers enters the scene acting all high and mighty, acting like the worst scum on the planet, which is to be expected, but Shaki stands her ground, which is huge given what she, or what I assume she, went through. But he does resort to violence because that's what horrible people do. If you're able to stand up to them mentally, all they will have left over you is their physicality. But instead of trying to take her for himself as a slave or something, he goes to kill her, and he says this is because she will end up in Garling's hands anyway, so I guess if Summers can't have her, then nobody can. It sounds like Garling had more influence than any of the other members, even here, although his title card in this flashback doesn't give him any special title, so I wonder if there is a commander of the Holy Knights at this point, or maybe it was only introduced for Garling because of his achievements on this day. And if he does kill Mafi when she returns with only Shamrock, then it does make clear he is a step above the rest of the knights. Plus, we do see him take charge whenever the members are gathered, so he's already the de facto leader of the group, it seems, at this point in time, even if he doesn't have an official title yet. With all of the big names coming together, Roger ends up clashing with Newgate and clears the path for Rayleigh, the man of the hour, to go ahead. So before Summers can kill Shaki, and with the assist from his captain and crew, the best wingmen, Rayleigh puts him down with an attack pose that reminds me very heavily of Zoro. But a couple things, Gaban isn't the one to defeat Summers, but instead it's Rayleigh, so this could mean two things. One is that maybe Gaban doesn't fight Summers, but because Rayleigh beat him so badly and Gaban is pretty much his equal, that's why he was so scared in the present. It was kind of fear by proxy, by association. Either that, or he does get up and keep fighting only for Gaban to put him straight back down, and it isn't fear by association, it's just straight fear. The chapter ending with Shaki and Rayleigh pouring themselves out to each other, and his actions also leave Roger and Gaban in tears of jealousy, I guess, but also tears of joy. I think they put their own feelings aside to help out their brother, so I'm sure this marks the end of their longing for Shaki now that she has finally found herself with Rayleigh. But if Gaban and Roger knew here who their soulmates would be in the future, they would not be crying before the captain gives an order to his crew. The mission to save Shaki is a success, so take all the treasure that you can find. There's something so satisfying to me about Roger telling his crew to plunder for treasure, because that's Pirate 101. This is their triumph, so to the victor goes the spoils. They can take everything that can be taken. So this is the second chapter of the God Valley incident now in the books. The Rocks pirates slowly falling apart, Shaki saved, everyone coming together in the middle of town, and I would expect that given he wasn't the focus of this chapter, I assume xebec is going to be the focus of the next one, his own story of trying to find his family, which I do think he's going to fail at. With Shaki now being saved, it seems all Roger has left to do now is fight, collect some treasure, pick up a chest or two maybe. What's Garling going to do? Because since the tournament didn't actually end, then with his title of the champion of God Valley, he couldn't have got it from that, which means he must have done something in this incident to earn it. I'd say we still have at least 2, maybe 3 chapters to go for this incident as a whole. Is Imu going to intervene? Will there be any Domi reversing? Sengoku really missed all of this. Although to be fair, so would have Garp if he didn't find out about Roger's presence. So the biggest incident in modern One Piece history continues next week.